Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It's another Thursday, and Dave is here actually, folks. He's working on a different connection, and he was just in here, and so he's getting reconnected again. He's going to pop back in, but the show must go on. So we are live. It's Thursday, September 14th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time for me anyway. So yeah, another edition of NWF Rewind, and I kind of hinted on it last week. I thought, we haven't done a Fred Moore taping in a while, something from Fred Moore Junior High. So I thought, let's do a Fred Moore taping. And so that's going to be the show we're going to watch today. Should be a good one. Kind of looking forward to that. Facebook user says hello. For those of you on Facebook, if you look at the description, there's a little instructions on to go to like a little AVMX page, and you can type some. You just got to give permission, and then it won't just say Facebook user. We can actually see who you are. So that's a little tip there. That always makes it work easier. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Dave will be popping in here anytime. So I'm just going to kind of wait for him to get in. That's the thing when you go live, there's no time to wait. We just gotta hit the start button when 7 o'clock rolls around. Yeah, but Fred Moore Junior High, the Fred Moore Fred Moore stuff was, and this particular taping we're watching is going to be show number 56 from Fred Moore. It was our second show in Fred Moore. And these early Fred Moore shows, because what we did when we went into Fred Moore, we did the show on one Sat. We went into Fred Moore every weekend, every Saturday. But every other Saturday we would tape shows. The ones in between we called them practice sessions, and we would just, work. Me and Steve particularly working with the guys, trying to get the technique up a little to par a little bit better. But this was the beginning, so we're just starting these practice sessions, and you'll really notice the change over the course of these shows of where the professional style wrestling starts to evolve in a little bit more as we transition from the garage material, the garage days. So I see Dave popping in. There he is. Are you there, Dave?
I can't hear you, Sean.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? I did hear you.
Can you hear me, Sean?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
Because I can't hear anything right now.
Yeah, you might want to look at your audio settings and making sure your audio output's going where you want it. Like it might be trying to go to your Bluetooth or something.
Let me...
Yeah, that sometimes... I know that if you had Bluetooth set up before, it might still be set to that. But I do hear you. But yeah, so as I was saying about the Fred Moore material, so this is... I was telling everybody about how we got into Fred Moore and we did practice sessions in between the actual shows. And we started to do that. But it was probably a month or two later when we decided to, when we announced we're doing the Anoka Armory. That's when we really started to take it more seriously as far as what we're going to look like in the ring, because we realized we're going in front of people, and that set a new precedent for us. I mean, we just we didn't want to look. We wanted to look somewhat presentable. So I know that I just remember that being a time period when we really started to try to think, deep and heavy on it. So I know Dave, your audio was working earlier, but when you first came in, I know you could hear me, so I'm not sure what happened here. But we do hear you, so yeah. But yeah, I was gonna bring up the information here for this show today. Yeah, Dave's in the process of relocating, so he's kind of in the makeshift situation this week, so he's relocating across town. And so he's just dealing with that. But yeah, so, and by the way, I was going to ask everybody that's been watching, what shows do you want to see? Do you have a preference as far as, what era you want to see us in? Did you like the garage? You like watching the garage shows? You like watching the Group W Cable Studio stuff? The Fred Moore stuff like we're going to watch today? Do you like the outdoor stuff that came along later on this year? I'm talking this year, in 1986? Or the Armory material? So there's always... I'm always curious what people want to see, as far as you want to see the earlier stuff, you want to see the later stuff. It's always interesting to me. And while Dave gets his things worked out, I'm probably going to start the show streaming, and I'm sure Dave will jump in here as soon as he's ready. But yeah, so I got the wrong one. Here we go. Oh, trying to get that show information up, but I just realized. Can you hear us now, Dave? Any luck with your audio? Looks like you're still working on that. But yeah, here's the information. Had the wrong year. So, Fred Moore NWF TV taping from Fred Moore Junior High taping 56, recorded on February 1st, 1986. That's what we're going to take a look at. And while Dave's working out the bugs, I am going to start the show so we get the show on the road. So let's get going with it. Get rid of that banner. There we go. And should start playing here momentarily. There we go. Yep, this was the new intro for the Fred Moore Junior High era. This intro you're seeing. This is when we were on like a 2-month delay before we went to Fred Moore, and we decided to make a new intro for the show in 1986. So all the material, all the footage you're seeing is, you know, from actual garage material mainly. A little bit of Group W stuff, but because we just didn't have stuff we could use yet for the intro. You know, we didn't have enough stuff recorded at Fred Moore yet. But yeah, still lots. I'm trying to think now. This show here. So Thandar the Barbarian, he was on one of our garage shows. A couple, you know, he made an appearance in the summer and was on a few shows. He returns, so it's the return of Thandar on this particular taping. Tough Tony's there. We got U.S. Enforcer, Slick Steenerson, and the Eye, the Chris Irick, the one that, you know, Rockin' Roundabout was talking about, how he's kind of a little bit of a troublemaker and back in the day, and that he was. But his character was pretty good on the show. I always liked Chris Irick's character. The Eye, he called himself. And yeah, man, I mean, the only guys that weren't here, Kid Kelsey was here. Who wasn't here was the Super D's. They were not on this. They didn't make this show, I don't think. So I could be wrong though. Well, we'll see. It's been a while since I've seen this stuff. And this here is just a little kind of a highlight thing we did, just saying, kind of showing what's going to be coming up on the show. So we're just talking about the show here, like all the matches that you're going to be seeing. Notice Steve Engstrom all dressed up nice. For these few shows, Steve was kind of doubling up as an announcer, you know, giving it a little bit of a professional touch. And he had that like suit that he wore and looked kind of nice for the show. Ah yeah, the Rock and Roller. Mike Sanger was his name. Rockin' Roundabout's tag team. We called them the Rock and Rollers. Yep. Tough Tony there against the Eye. That's kind of a preview of what we're going to see. Yeah, Bulldog Butcher also makes his return since the garage days. Yep. Troy Otto's his name. Tokyo Terror against Crusher Crossen for the world title. This was before that other match we've seen with Tokyo Terror that happened, you know, later on in Fred Moore. Yeah, and the Ring Warriors, we had them signed against Mr. X, Mr. X2. Now this is a match that's signed for this show for the world tag team titles, because the Ring Warriors were the champions. They did win the belts. The end of the rest. Hey there, Dave? I know Dave's been working on his audio. He's having to use his cell phone is what's going on. He's just having some audio issues with it. Yeah, these were like, this was our way of doing commercials, these things. We'd use these public service announcements, because when you're on community television, you can't actually advertise, so we would do this. We wanted it to feel like a commercial. And we always liked the sporting ones like this, kind of more related to what we're doing. I'll tell you, the one I couldn't stand were the horses and the ranch. And, Hey, there we go. I see Steve Engstrom in there. He's announcing for us. And notice the crowd. This is where we really get the wrestlers to be the crowd. We want to have that live crowd sound. That was a space shuttle crash. Just happened. And Steve made mention of it. Our thoughts were with them.
We're very sorry about them. You know, space shuttle guys.
This Challenger crashed. Yeah. So yeah, here's Thandar the Barbarian. Big kid actually.
And here's Thundar.
For I mean, comparison to the rest of us. And Kid Kelsey. So Kelsey was at the peak of his thing here. He was really into this. I mean, Kelsey was always wearing this blue look now. The blue pants, the blue shirt with the USA. This was kind of the Kelsey's look. He had been doing this from the later shows in the garage. He kind of goes with this look through most of the '86. And really Kelsey really put a lot of thought into his appearance. He wanted to look. He's got the wristbands. I mean, he really wanted to look the part. Thandar, tough kid, tough guy, man. Tim Holland, he was a tough kid. I mean, for real. Yeah, I'll tell you something. Taking any kind of a fall on this Fred Moore Junior High boxing ring, I should point out, was not fun. And I don't know, is this audio a little too loud? Maybe I can fix that. It sounds too loud. I can adjust that a little bit. Be a little bit better. Yeah, you guys, Slick Steenerson. See, that's their music too, and Kelsey using their music. Pointing that out, Slickster. He's kind of your commentators are Slick Steenerson in the eye, and I guess I'm at the table too. I hope Dave gets his stuff figured out here, because it always works when I have my co-host to bounce things off of. The funny thing is, it was working just fine until he started pushing buttons trying to see other things, and then that's when we lost his audio. He was trying to see if he could see any comments or anything like that. Yeah, he'll get it figured out. So,
here's the eye. Yeah, well, if I take my advice, the Kid Kelsey, he will. Oh, that was a close line to Kid Kelsey. Just take my advice. Kelsey will win this. Oh, two. But Kelsey will win this.
All right, Kelsey asking for a faster count.
Let's see if Crusher has anything to say.
Hey, dude, you're watching the time clock here. About 2.5 minutes in the match. No, not yet.
Oh, what's he gonna do? Huh? Oh, he misses with an elbow smash.
Misses with an elbow smash. And tremendous people on hand here. Sold out at the Fred Moore Junior High. Kelsey getting up. What's gonna happen?
Kelsey!
He's stepping out of the ring.
All right, Kelsey, come on! Call him out, ref! Yeah. Kelsey! Kelsey! You chipped in! Get in that ring, Kelsey!
Yep, I was just replying to Dave there. He's still trying to work out his issues with his connections. This is how he's trying to get on the show. So yeah, let's get back to the match here. Thandar and Kelsey. Tim was pretty... In the beginning, Tim was very meek and mild, but as he got comfortable, he really came into his style of his character, which was a rough and tumble. I mean, he was like a bit stiff, in the ring, but very polished. I mean, he got really good. Tim did. And I'm not taking nothing away from Kelsey, by the way, when I say all this, but I'm just talking about Tim right now. But he was stiff. I'll say that. And when I say stiff, I mean the clothesline, you felt it. If he elbow dropped you, you're gonna feel it. Over the top rope. Kelsey, this is not babyface type material, Kelsey. We're supposed to be babyface. Kelsey likes to do the heel. He wanted to be a heel so bad. He eventually did become a heel, by the way. Yeah. This was the best we could do for slow motion. All we're doing is we're just cueing it. We're slowing the cue down. It's not true slow motion. But back then they didn't have that. They didn't have the good equipment that could do slow motion in our studios and stuff at the cable company. So we had to do what we call like a makeshift slow motion. That's what that was. That's why that line was kind of in there. That was the best we could do on that. That little promo there is Rough Ryan, Kelsey's younger brother, against myself in the garage. One of our tapings in there.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're here at ringside.
So we're going to have an interview.
In here after this very obscene gesture that he just did. Throwing over the top rope.
He was disqualified for throwing him over the top ropes. And also, you got to count 10.
Well, the ref says it's a disqualification on your half for throwing over the top rope. You have any comment?
Yeah, you big sick.
I guess
Kind of interesting there, I would say, the way he's handling that interview.
we'll be back after the station.
It's almost
Sorry
like
about
Kelsey-
jumping in and out, folks. I'm having issues this week,
Are you able to
but
hear
I'm
us
here.
yet? Are you able to hear us yet, Dave? Okay, it looks like Dave can't hear us, but we heard you. So, another one of those public service announcements for the American Heart Association. I know Dave's been working on his audio, trying to get it figured out. So it's kind of hard for him to talk with us if his audio's not working. I'm not sure. I mean, I can't walk him through it. We're on the show live, so to try to figure out what's going on.
101 pounds, Tokyo Terror.
All right, Tokyo Terror coming in against Corporal Crossen, Jason Crossen. I was just talking about him. So yeah, looking forward to Jason coming on as a guest, probably in the fall sometime when it slows down for him. This is when Jason was still able to wrestle. You know, his mom ended up putting a stop to that, is what happened.
There's the bell. The Tokyo Terror versus Corporal Crossen. This is East versus West, so to say. Tokyo versus USA. And I don't know who's gonna win.
After I joined the NWF, Corporal Crossen didn't wrestle too much.
Flips him over. Well, you know, on the card, I would like to
Yeah, that's right, because his mom put a stop to that.
as
Yeah, she didn't want him doing it. She's afraid he's gonna get hurt. But Jason didn't want to tell us that. I found this out
destroyers.
during the Untold Story interviews, whenever
Hi,
he was interviewed
Angie.
for that.
Kid USA Kelsey against Bulldog the Butcher. Yet to come.
So yeah, oh yeah, that's right.
And Crusher
Keep track of the comments.
myself.
Oh, Gizmo.
And the main event.
I didn't miss this one. Let's see what Gizmo has to say. Did you ever get TV endorsement or money generated from your TV programming? Nope. First of all, it wasn't allowed, so we couldn't do that. I'll tell you a story about that, though. So no, we got no endorsement, no money. The only money we ever got was from the Armory cards, and that was our own promoted events that we did. And even then, once we got it worked out with cable, we had to be very careful on how we promoted those things. We could never mention ticket prices. So that was the kind of the one rule there. But what happened with the league, and I talked about this before, and when we were in the dry dock at the end of the NWF run, when Ernie had taken over the promoting of the show, we ended up doing. We're still on public access, and the cable company came to me because I was in charge of the production side of the league at that time. And they said, hey, would you be interested in bringing it over to local origination, which is the paid side. So if we were to do that, we would end up having, like, we could do commercials, we generate income, it would be a really, then we would be getting money. And so I talked to Ernie about it, and I talked to Jeff Dinsmore, who was really involved with this, and we were all, yeah, let's do it. Well, my producers at the time, Greg Bushman and Scott Dotzler, they were the technical producers or I shouldn't say my directors, that ran the mobile van for us in the dry dock. They realized they would be out of this gig. And so Greg Bushman, the salesman that he was, did that puppy dog sad face with Ernie saying, gosh, I wish we could keep doing it. Ernie has got a heart as big as gold, and he just said, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it for these guys. I can't do that to these guys. So at the 11th hour, Ernie called and said, no, we're not going to do it. I think that was a mistake, though, because that would have been... See, for me, I was always wanting to take the NWF to the next level. And even though I didn't own the show anymore, I wanted to take it to the next level. And that would have took it to the next level. And I was so disappointed when Ernie didn't want to do it. I know... Look, Greg and Scott, they produced all sorts of things, directed all sorts of things. They would have had other stuff to do, but they really like doing the wrestling show with us. So, I don't know. I can see it both ways, but that was the only time that we would have had a chance to make some money from the actual show, and it would have been on local origination instead of public access, which basically it's another version of community television, but it allows commercials and stuff, and then you do a shared revenue with the cable company. So you get half, they get half, type of thing. All right. So sorry that was long-winded there, Gizmo, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Yeah, this makeshift slow motion was just me cueing it with the cue on the VCR thing. I know Dave would like to talk, but because he can't hear us, he's having a hard time to say anything. So if he does start talking, I will just stop and let him talk so he can get his comments in. It's about the best we can do for Dave.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with an interview with Corporal Crossen. Let me tell you, I won that whole block fair and square. Little Tokyo, go back home.
Which one?
Well, I guess that about wraps up this interview. We'll be back after a station identification.
Yeah, this is a recruiting segment.
Sure, we can meet. Just a minute. We're on.
Yeah, Jason was always a comedian, trying to be funny.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the NWF. Excuse me. What a match you just saw. This is Ray Johnson. What a match you just saw.
Yeah, that Ray Johnson, like I said, that was just a name we used. Rob Jacob was the first Ray Johnson.
And hospitalized. As you see, he was bleeding.
The original Ray Johnson, I should say.
Even though Team USA did lose by an unconscious pinning,
let's see, Gizmo says, I didn't know any of that. Did you ever get merchandise money? No, they didn't. Merchandise, we couldn't afford anything like that. The closest thing I ever did to merchandising was making my own NWF shirt that I used to wear to the ring, that half-cut shirt that I used to wear. And I did it in graphics class. Because back then, you'd have to do screen printing to do that kind of thing, and it was expensive, and there's no way we could afford any kind of merchandising. When we did the Armory events, I did do program guides, and I went to the print shop in town and had them make up. I had to do the masters, and then they would make it up for us, and it'd be like a half-fold thing, and we'd sell them for 50 cents. And you had 300 people coming in there, and all of them, pretty much everybody buying one. That's just a little extra money then that helped go towards the event. The thing I noticed when we were doing the first Armory card is I didn't want to deal with food and beverage, so I had the Blaine Johnsville Lions Club come in and do all the hot dogs and soda and all that concessions, right? And then I seen the money they made doing concessions, and I'm like, all right, that's we're losing money here. So the next Armory card, I took over the concessions. I didn't do it personally, but we as the NWF did our own concessions and stuff.
Both of those
Um,
addresses.
Because I just didn't realize how much they would make on that.
For NWF update.
So they did pretty well doing the concessions. Yeah, feel free to ask more questions, you guys, and I know there's we got people watching. Feel free to chime in and ask any questions you have as we're watching the show. We don't have to wait till the end all the time. And I know Dave's he's still trying to see if he can't fix his connection so he can hear everything. He just can't hear us, even though we can hear him. So, something messed up on his phone there, I'd say. This is an awkward match because it's the U.S. Enforcers versus the Russian Destroyers. This is two heel teams, two bad guy teams, right? And didn't do this a whole lot, you know, in the 80s. It was always good versus evil in these days. You know, I mean, as far as that's usually what you had. You didn't see a lot of these, you know, heel versus heel, face versus face type matches.
Squaring off against Butcher Bulldog.
You know, Troy Steenerson, Slick Steenerson, you know, he did the U.S. Enforcers, and when the Eye was kicked out of the show, he literally said, you know, he's one of the few kids we kicked off the show, and I'll explain why. But when we had to get rid of him, Troy then picked Jay Downs, the Fly, to be his new partner, who was just coming into the league at the time. And but Troy told me even though Chris was a problem and we had to get rid of him, it was out of all the partners that Troy had, and he had the Eye, he had the Fly, and eventually Mr. Macho. The Eye, Chris Irick, he said, was always his favorite. He felt it fit the style of what Steenerson wanted. So he always, and I gotta say, you know, Chris Irick, his character was great. But what was happening off the show is behind, you know, when the cameras weren't rolling, Chris Irick, the Eye, was just a kind of a hard to handle kid. He's getting in trouble on and off the show, in and out of school, you know, got in trouble. And he would get into conflicts with other kids, and they would get into it. Not fight, but they would, you know, as kids do, right? Just push shove type thing. And after a while, you know, I warned him a couple times, and I think we suspended him once, and finally it got to the point where it got out of hand at one of the shows. I don't even remember the details. It wasn't on camera, but it was off camera. And I said, Chris, you're done. We're going to have to let you go. Can't have it anymore. And that was it. It was right before the Anoka Armory card when we did that with the Eye. It just got out of hand, you know. And if it gets out of hand, see I didn't want to ever kick anybody off the show, but this was a situation where it was affecting other kids. You know, his behavior. That was the problem. So, yeah. You know, everybody's still just... This is still very much garage style show wrestling technique here. It was after a few of our practice sessions when this wrestling technique started to get a little bit more polished as far as professional type wrestling. They're kind of confused because that was not supposed to be the finish on this. That's why they're looking around. The U.S. Enforcers are supposed to win. They're supposed to win the national tag titles here. This is a match for the national tag team titles. So yeah, this finish got messed up. That's why they look confused. One of those things that happen. So we change it. That's why you said winner U.S. Enforcers in text, and you'll hear I'll come on in an interview and we'll correct this here in a minute on the show. 412 Films. Hey everyone, good to see you watching. I remember you from last show. You had some great questions. And feel free to ask any more. Dave is with us. It's just So here's what's happening, guys. Dave is relocating across town, and he doesn't have his normal setup anymore. It's packed. And so he's having to use his phone. He's having issues getting it to connect. So he's trying to get it working here. Hopefully we can get it fixed. I don't know if you can hear us, Dave. I see you're back in again.
The U.S. Enforcers are the national tag team champions right now. And now I believe you're conducting an interview with them. Yes, I am.
Yeah, it said they got disqualified, so I changed the decision. Because they were supposed to win. We had plans for the Russian destroyers. And national tag team titles wasn't in that plan.
That about wraps up this interview. It looks like we got ourselves some new champions. So let's stay tuned and keep an eye on it.
I like the fact that Steve is trying to keep things professional like this. You know, what is his whole, gimmick and everything. You know, that with the suit and everything. You know, Steve in the beginning, you guys, Steve meant well. He really did. He was sincere with what he was doing with everything here, and you got to commend him for that. I'm not a fan of what he did when he tried to go with Larry and all that stuff, and he knows that. He knows how I feel about it. But he's apologized for that since. What more can we say today, right?
It all depended on the circumstances in the match.
Oh, can you hear us, Dave? At least, maybe you're hearing the delay, I bet. I bet you're on the YouTube delay, so at least you can hear us somewhat. That'll help. Yeah, at least Dave can hear it somewhat. Did it happen often that the wrong or unplanned team won? Yes, it did, actually. That wasn't the first time that happened. And sometimes we had to roll with it. For example, I'll give you an example of that. When we did the Anoka Armory show, Mr. X2 went against the Barbarians for the World Tag Team titles. And Mr. X2 were supposed to win them back, and it didn't happen. It got messed up, and we just went with it. You know, we didn't always do those Vern Gagne, we're going to change it on the following TV taping or whatever. Yeah, sometimes we just rolled with it, but yes, that's one I know that happened at the Armory, and in fact, there's been a couple times things happened at the Armory like that. At some of those Armory shows we did, and even TV tapings. You know, I guess sometimes it just. I was thinking that Sergeant Smash at the October card. I remember when he got the 3 count. He wasn't supposed to. He got up and he covers his mouth like, "Oops," all right on camera. And he knew he messed up. But you know, they weren't. Nobody was disciplined for anything. Like, we weren't. You know, we just said, okay, we screwed up. We just move on. You know, it's not like we got on anybody for it. You know, mistakes happen, but so yeah, the rock and roller Mike Sanger, he actually was in amateur wrestling. The other rock and roller, not Rock and Ronabomb that's in the ring, but his partner. I think he was just getting into it though. He wasn't like into it heavy or anything. But see, Gizmo says. Did wrestlers purposely win when they were, and it looks like it got cut off, supposed to lose is what I'm thinking you could ask. I sometimes wonder if that happened, if they would never admit it. Like, for instance, in that Barbarians match, I kind of wonder if they did that on purpose to keep the belts. But I don't think so. I remember them saying later on, like, we didn't want you to think that we did it on purpose, because we did. You know, it was an honest. Most of the time, it was an honest mistake. I don't think anybody did it intentionally. It was all different when we did the shoot title matches, right? It was a totally different situation. But when we started booking it right and predetermining it completely, nah. Some kids were not happy with it, though. I know that people would say, how come I'm losing? How come I'm losing? You know, they didn't get the... A lot of times the kids didn't understand it was a work. You know, and like all of us, myself included, at that age, you want to win all the time. You know, you just want to. And so sometimes they don't see the big picture like we do when we're older. You know, when we watch wrestling or we book it or we, you know, it's all about the whole big picture in the end. And but some kids, and then some kids like Terry Block, they had no problem. You want me to lose, I'll lose. You want me to win, I'll win. You know, he never argued it. So people like Terry.
He's mad at Crossen, obviously from his actions.
Those good questions, you guys.
Thank you, Ray Johnson. Thank you. I will let you, Ray Johnson, take control of the mic.
What does it mean when you say shoot? Okay, when I say shoot, what that means is it's real. It's not fake. Although a lot of times you'll hear me say shoot/work, because when shoot means it's not predetermined. You know, it's real. It's a real wrestling match, basically. And so, yeah, when I say shoot, that's what I mean. But when we did our title matches, they were shoot/works, meaning you worked. You know, you weren't in there to hurt each other. You weren't trying right away. But towards the end of the match, you were trying to get a win or a submission or something, and it gets really intense and physical. That's where there's. And that's how those title matches went. And we did all shoot title matches in '85, pretty much. And it was in '86, right now, was when we started to get away from that. So that's what I mean when I say shoot. A shoot match. Or makes sense? Yeah, it was not a good idea, in hindsight, to do shoot title matches with us, because we haven't watched the show yet, but I will eventually show the show where there was a match with myself and Kid Kelsey for the title that got ugly. And when I say ugly, it got intense and physical. And it really affected our friendship for a couple months after that match. So that's really what woke me up to it and said, you know what, we're not doing this no more. I love the competitiveness of it, but at the same time, real friendships were getting affected, and I felt it firsthand in that one. And so did Matt, Kid Kelsey. Ryan Kelsey, right here, Rough Ryan, throw me in the ropes. He was great, man. I wished he would have stuck with it, because once Larry got rid of the lightweights, he kind of just got out of it. He was for instance, Ryan was at the last Armory card we did, but he wasn't in the ring wrestling anymore. But Ryan was coming along pretty good on the show. And if we ever would have seen Kelsey's younger brother, Wade Kelsey, he would have been a Tasmanian devil, I'm telling you. His youngest brother was just hell on wheels. I would have, but his dad thought he was just a little too old to be on the show. These interviews. Very strange again. I got Sergeant Smash. These are like babyface versus babyface, good guys versus good guys type team matchups. Kind of strange. Jason trying to settle all of them down.
This seems to be some sort of there's something going wrong with our next match.
This was always my favorite promo we've run because it's, you know, as closely related as to wrestling as can be, you know. I'll tell you, if we show that one with the horses, I'll say that's the one I hated the most. That's why we don't see it very often. Horses running around and... Yeah. Dave's here, you guys. He's just having issues with his audio, so he can't hear us. That's the problem. He's on his cell phone instead of his normal MacBook thing that he uses. So, Tough Tony, Tony Levitt, and the Chris Eyrick. You know, Tough Tony's hopefully going to be a guest with us here in the next couple shows. We're just waiting to see what date's going to work for him best. But he's looking forward. I know he's looking forward to coming on. So I'm looking forward to talking to Tony. I haven't talked to Tough Tony since back in the day, and just it's really fun to, like when we had Troy Dazowski, one of the Super Ds, was a guest on our last season of shows. That was really fun talking to those guys again. You know, after not talking to them since they were, 10, 11 years old. I imagine Tony's probably 11 here, maybe 10 or 11.
Mr. Preston. We have up.
You know, Tony's,
DI getting up there. Oh, he misses.
you know, he was a perfect, Tough Tony was a perfect, you know, so the Super D's had their biggest rivalry with the Rough Russians, who was Tough Tony and Bernie Prescott, his partner, who was a friend of Tony's in where they grew up together in Coon Rapids. And that was a great rivalry, and it really, that Tough Tony and his partner Bernie and the Super D's, that was a great chemistry for matches, and that we did a lot of those in Fred Moore here leading up to the Armory, as well as they had their Armory match. So Tony really, you know, as good as we say the Super D's got in '86, Tough Tony was a part of that. You know, he was who they were wrestling the most that year, and it was a great matchup for them. So the Super D's had this great matchup with Tough Tony. So Gizmo says, which wrestler were they intimidating when the wrestlers were holding the American flag?
Obviously did not see that.
Well, that was Sergeant Smash with the flag. That was his gimmick. He's kind of like a Sergeant Slaughter. And that's who he's trying to be with the flag. You know, Sergeant Smash, Sergeant Slaughter type thing. You know, the flag, oh man, I'll never forget this at the Anoka Armory. So Sergeant Smash would come out with that flag. And they had that 6-man tag match at the Anoka Armory event, and he, you know, brings the flag out and he waves it. And then they didn't, somehow the flag got propped up in the ring post corner, and eventually it got bumped or knocked, and it fell on the floor. Now, anybody who knows anything about the flag, it's never supposed to touch the ground like that. Now, we're just kids, right? We don't know that so much. And so the flag is cut down. I remember a fan, a lady, you know, an older woman, came and picked that flag up, and she, you know, wrapped it up, and she came to Jason Clausen, who was around the ring, you know, monitoring everything as the announcer, and she gave him an earful that this flag should never touch the ground, and handed it to him. And Jason, I remember coming to me with that and saying, just so you know, we had a fan that was very upset on that. And then you realize, you know, when you're doing something in public, you've got to, there's things like that you got to be very careful with. And that was kind of a wake up for me, I remember hearing that. So, yeah, it's not a prop. The flag, you know, it should never touch the ground like that. I mean, we use it as a prop on our show with the characters. But... And as an adult, again, here we go, 20/20 vision's perfect. But, you know, when you're a kid, you just didn't, you know, it's a learning experience, let's just say that. Yeah, the wrestling, like I said, like the drop kicks, they're not polished yet. It gets better with the more practice sessions. And once we decide to do the Armory card, we really kick those practice sessions into high gear. Because I remember having conversations with Steve on this, saying, Steve, we got to get our technique up to par if we're doing the Armory. You know, in front of people. But my thinking was this. I figured we had enough fans at this, because when we did the Anoka Armory, we had been on the air for 2 years with our show. I figured we have enough fan base to be able to do this. That was my thinking. That was my gut instinct, I guess you could say. And, well, I mean, the rest was history, but that doesn't mean I wasn't worried about it. When we only had 60 advanced sales going in that Armory show, I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? Because that's nowhere going to near pay the bill. I mean... right. They were too long. Yeah, our audio's getting a little choppy here. Let's see right again. I don't know if I can fix it, but...
Kelsey.
We'll be right back after station identification. Don't you dare go away.
Yeah, the audio's getting a little choppy. But the playback's still good, so. This was the promo that Jason Clausen liked. He was a military guy, so he loved the National Guard stuff. If he had it his way, he'd... See, Jason and I in these days were editing... He wanted to come to the editing session, so he'd always come with me. And if he had it his way, he'd play this every time. He really liked... Jason was Corporal Clausen, but he really was a big fan of that. You know, the military and everything. He was, you know, if he could, he would have went into the National Guard right away. So he liked that stuff. I know, Dave, you're there. I imagine you're still having trouble hearing us. You're probably watching us on delay, if I had to guess. Let's see. Who controlled, directed all the action as it took place from the
Pretty
first
much
entrance?
Crusher was in charge of the show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. As far as, yeah, dictating, I would, you know, I talked about this a few weeks ago. You know, the problem I had with people, you know, like when I got rid of Rob, or I suspended him, Rob Jacob, back in the Group W cable days, because he said he could have made a show, but he didn't want to, and he was mad at me about something at the time and the decisions we made on the show. So to get back at me, he was just not going to show up. And I was real big on showing up if you can. And he initially said he was going to be there, then he doesn't show up. What I had to do when I booked these shows, you know, all these TV tapings, I had to call all the kids that were going to be on it. Say, hey, are you going to be able to make the show? Yes or no? Okay, you can. Good. And then I write them down, and I have to do that with everybody. And then once I had everybody figured out who's going to be there, then I would put the matches together. Well, the minute you get somebody not showing up that said they were going to be there, it screws up the whole card. And especially in the Group W cable days when you only had a 3-hour block. There wasn't time to rework the card. So that really got on me. That's why I would get so mad back then with that kind of stuff. Mad, you know, with Rob. Rob and I clashed, though. I mean, with direction of the show, with creativity. Rob and I were very similar, and so he had a lot of ideas, and so did I. And we would sometimes our ideas weren't on the same page. But you know, back in these days, with Fred Moore, yeah, I kind of directed everything, directed traffic. Steve was also there, but Steve was following my direction. I never felt like Steve was directing anything, but what Steve was just a great second hand. I could say, hey, Steve, will you make sure that this and this and this is done? Good. And then I would go on to something else, because there's so many things to do. You know, like when we get there, we have to set the cameras up, get the lighting up, get the chairs, you know, position where we want, get the announcing table set up, microphone. And I would start delegating. I'd say, okay, you guys get the camera set up. Did you guys get these lighting units over here? And everybody pitched in. And that's kind of how, you know, we did it as far as getting ready. The Anoka Armory shows, that was a lot. That was the same thing on a bigger scale, and I had all the wrestlers showing up early to help set up, get chairs put around the ring, all that stuff. Everybody pitched in. Steve spent most of the time getting our lighting unit rigged above the ring. He said he had a plan for it, and when it was all said and done, it worked out good. Steve dialed that thing in and got it up there above the ring. Just wish we had more lights for it. Yeah, sorry about the audio on this, you guys. Something must have got screwed up in the compression of it when it was encoded.
Sorry about that small technical error there.
So, I don't know. Nothing much we can do, but at least we can still see it, so.
Anyways, getting back to the spectacular East versus West, as I call it.
Did any of the parents come in and help set up any of the show? Only time that happened is at the Armory cards. I know my dad would come and ask if I needed any help. And then he would just assist us, like bolt nuts and bolts type thing, like because we had to put the ring together, so everybody's bolting it up and everything. And he would just be in, just helping. I know he was there. And then what I would do is, for the ticket counter, I needed somebody to be at the ticket counter. So I asked a couple. I remember I had Matt's mom, and I had my mom, I think, and I'd have them run the ticket counter and handle taking care of getting them, collecting the money and that, because I didn't want us kids doing it at the table. So it made sense to have them do it. And then they were more than... So they didn't come saying they're going to do it. They just came asking what they, is there anything we could do to help? And I asked some of the kids' parents, I think Tony's dad, and there's somebody else, asked them if they could be security, escorting the wrestlers to the ring. So we had somebody with the kids as they walked to the ring. I felt it just made sense to have somebody walking with them. So I know we had some of that going on. In all those years, I don't remember ever meeting your dad, even when I stayed over. Let's see. I'm going to have to see who that was. Oh, that's Chad Jones. I have to go to Facebook to see. No, Chad, yeah, my dad, so my parents were divorced at the time, so I was living with my mom in Anoka, so he probably, my dad was down in Richfield. He never really, my dad showed up a couple times to the shows when we were done just to pick me up. And I know my dad helped me come up with the idea to bolt the posts to the stage. Because I was asking him what's the best way to do it, and he said maybe we should get those U-bolt things, and that's what we did. Chad Jones, by the way, he's one of those guys. Remember I told you when we did Group W cable shows, I had a crew of people doing the directing, audio, and all that. Chad was, I think, the audio for our shows. Did a lot of that. Sometimes he did directing too, I think. But he was part of that crew with the other Axis volunteers, and that's how I met Chad. And I've stayed in touch with Chad ever since. Not everybody. I mean, the other guys, like some of those other guys, I think Mike Hobbit and Pat Hobbit, I never stayed in touch with them. But the only reason I got those guys to do that is because before we used to do it all. We would do everything. I wanted to concentrate on running the show, and if I could have them guys doing the technical stuff, it made it a lot easier. So, and this is Chad again. Interesting. Yep. He remembers what I was talking about. Here's that horse commercial. I just hated it. I just didn't like it. I suppose if you like horses, you like it. I just like the action stuff better. You never really talked about what role all your parents played in the company. Well, they weren't a part of it. The only time they were really even remotely involved was at the armory shows. And that was only at kind of my direction. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm telling my parents what to do, but they didn't know what was going to happen any more than the rest of us. But in my mind, I knew it was how this was going to go. And my dad understood the big picture, so he just, and I'm trying to think if there's any, I think it was just my dad, really. But he was just there in a supportive role just to make sure if there was anything he could do to help. But really, at where we needed it. I had all the wrestlers there. We had a flood of kids there to do things, and so we had plenty of extra hands. The only trouble is like the Super D's chasing each other around with Tough Tony and playing, at that age. Sometimes you gotta say, kids, come on, not kids, but I'd say, guys, come on, we got stuff to do. But that we're all kids. What can you say? Camera, audio, and some directing. Yeah, that was Chad Jones. That's what he did for us behind the scenes. No, the parents. Maybe Chad can comment. Chad, what do you remember about parents on the show? I mean, they weren't there at the studio ever. The only time they showed up was just to pick up their kids or drop them off. I will say this though, they watched the show every week. I remember Matt's dad talking to me about you got to get that after match stuff under control, because in the group debut cable days, you'd always have this commotion after every match where it got out of hand, and he's like, you got to get it more organized. He tried to give us tips and techniques. I think honestly though, I think talking to my parents and others, other kids' parents, they were entertained with it. They liked watching it as well. Believe me when I say this, they knew we weren't in there to hurt each other. They knew we were doing a form of entertainment. So, they let us control it, I guess you could say. And, that's the best way to put it. And, yeah, they didn't, and you got to remember, the 80s, that's how it was in the 80s. Anybody who lived through the 80s knows exactly what I'm talking about as far as how parenting was in those days. It's different today. Because times have changed, right?
That was totally uncalled for. I might disqualify this, or I might not.
Yeah, my dad did, but I'll tell you, my dad was not a fan of me continuing this. Like when I started getting more into the Eddie Sharkey stuff and PWA and working the independent scene, that's when my dad's like, you know what, you're gonna pay for this years later with your back. Trust me, you don't want to keep doing this. And my dad really pushed me into going to college. He wanted me to get a college degree. He didn't want me to keep doing. He was not a fan of me. He loved the fact of what I created and what I did, but when I got going with it later on as a wrestler, that part in the independent scene, and that's where he didn't want me to do it, only because he didn't want me to get hurt or pay for it years later. That was his concern. I remember having conversations on that with him. Because I wanted to keep going. I wanted to, everybody's dream was to get to the WWF or whatever, and I really wanted to keep going with it. But my dad kind of brought me into reality a little bit. He would say, you're not big enough for this. Because back in them days, you had to be 200 plus pounds at the minimum. Yeah, this is I really like this, the Tokyo Terror. Having a Japanese wrestler that looked Japanese for us, because he was really Vietnamese. But this, and he got that foreign object. He had signaled for Butcher to get it earlier, and then he gets me over that. This is the kind of stuff we wanted to do with the Tokyo Terror. Be a big rule breaker, yeah. I like that. And there comes Corporal Clausen interfering. They were in the middle of a bit of a feud, and I think we were trying to build up that foreign legion, the Russian wrestlers, the Japanese, and
the match is still continuing. We have we have Corporal Clausen out here taking on the Bulldog. Oh, and off the
I don't know, our audio got messed up on the show here. This has been kind of a show of glitches, folks. Sorry about all this. Dave's audio's not working. I mean, we can hear him, but he can't hear us. And but I know Dave is a trooper. That's why he's staying in here. He doesn't want to just leave us. And I'm pretty sure by the next show, when he's already located, I'm pretty sure Dave will have everything dialed in and we'll be back to normal for that. So once he gets in his new place. Good questions, though, you guys. It was. I like the comments. You guys got really good articulate questions. I like that. Makes me think on some of those, I gotta say. And don't get me wrong. The parents. I don't want people to think that the parents just let us do whatever we want and they were kind of careless. It wasn't that. They trusted us. You got to remember, we were doing this show for 2 years, and it eventually grew into what it was. I think if we would have went to our parents out of the blue and said, "Hey, we want to get a professional wrestler and do matches at the Nova Armory," we would have never got there. It's because we evolved over 2 years. That's how that happened. And after a while, the parents realized this was constructive for us. Because guess what? The end product, they're watching it on cable, so they are seeing what their kids are doing. I have a feeling, too, that some of the kids came on the show, and I want to ask Tough Tony about this, Tony Levitt, because Bernie Prescott disappeared on us at the Armory show, and I think what happened is his parents may have not known he was involved in this, just coming with Tony to the shows. And when they seen what he was doing, they might have said, we don't want you doing this. I think that happened more than we realize. It definitely happened with Jason Clausen. His mom didn't want him to get hurt. I really wish Dave was here, though, because I'm talking nonstop. Not that I don't mind it, but I'm going to take a drink here. So this is an angle, you guys. That's not, it's basic, Chuck and Todd were not showing up. I would schedule them, they'd say, yep, okay, got it, and then they wouldn't show up. So got to realizing they're probably not going to come, so we're going to have to strip them. And that's what I did. I announced that the Mr. X, the Ring Warriors are stripped of the titles. The Mr. X and Mr. X2 are now awarded the belts. And some of these shows are, like this match particularly got edited heavily, unfortunately. Yeah, big death leap by Steve. He was good. Steve was really good in the ring. Steve's what brought us. Steve's style and technique, along with me a little bit, is what brought us into getting better matches. No doubt about that. Let's see what Chad says here. I think this is Chad anyway. I was there at the very beginning, pre-no ring days. What was your favorite part? The formative days or after it was somewhat formed? And this is Chad asking, because he was there in the beginning. Gosh. Well, what was fun in the beginning, the basement stuff, which was the very, very beginning, which I don't think you were involved in that, Chad, because that was in our basement with the mattresses. That part there, I didn't like the environment. I didn't like that where it looked like it was in somebody's basement. I loved the interviews though, because we really got into our interviewing segments and stuff back then. But fast forward a few shows when we first got into Group W Cable, and that's when you came along. What I liked about that early stuff without the ropes is I loved that new car smell. That studio was just built. The equipment was brand new. It felt like it had a new car. And here we are with this very expensive stuff that most kids never got to put their hands on in those days. It just felt surreal. And that part was fun. At the same time, the Anoka Armory stuff, oh gosh. I mean, in front of live people, that's something I can't even put into words what that feels like. So, to honestly, Chad, I like it all. My favorite part is all of it. That's the best way I can say. Yeah, the basement stuff was just it was probably 4 or 5 shows we did in the basement. There wasn't many. Once Charlie and I realized we could take a class and learn how to use the studio, that's where we wanted to go. So get a better look, that black curtain and everything, and the blue curtain. And I have heard you say often, this is Sports Talk 117, that many of the wrestlers were one and done. What percentage of the wrestlers stayed with NWF? Well, it's different phases of that. I would say at least 60% of the wrestlers stayed at least a 4 to 5 show span minimum. Like say more than 4 shows. The other 40% were in that 3 shows or less. That's kind of from what I remember. And then as far as who stayed with it start to finish, 5%, 10% maybe that were just from the beginning to the end. Well, yeah, from the true, I guess who stayed with it, they joined and then they stayed with it till the end. Yeah, about 10%, because you got to remember when Larry took over and tried to split the league or take, combined league, he wanted a lot of the lightweight wrestlers gone, and Larry was dictating, you got to get rid of him, you got to get rid of him, you got to get rid of him. And I was going along with it, and I really, regret it at the time, now, but we got rid of our whole lightweight division because of Larry and Luscious Larry. He didn't want him. And in the words of Matt Kelsey, it was a horrible decision. That's the way Matt said it, and I agree. I should have never did that. One of my worst things that I did, not that what I did, but that I went along with that. Because Larry started to make me think that it's time to evolve into a normal professional wrestling. Little did I know, Larry was just trying to take it over for him and his guys and his friends and whatever. And I got blindsided that way, I guess you could say. I remember this is Chad Jones again. I remember riding my 10-speed in the winter to get to the studio. I also remember picking you up once I got my license. Yeah, I remember that too. 66 Green Malibu, yeah, because I didn't have a car right away and I needed rides. Either Steve was giving me a ride or Chad or, yeah. And not only that, but Chad and I were kind of good friends off the show. We got to know each other from working with each other at Public Access. So, there was a while Chad Jones he was a little older, maybe he was a good influence on me back then. Made me see, I was having some personal struggles with the divorce, and Chad kind of helped mentor me through that, and I remember that. So, that was just more personal stuff, had nothing to do with the show. But oh, was that the end of the show? I got talking so much I wasn't even watching. I think we lost Dave, you guys. He's just gonna he'll get it figured out. Next time we go on the air. But yeah, so that was there were so many questions coming in, and I hope I know I get long-winded on some of these, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show itself. That audio, though, that's the first time that happened. I'll have to make sure. I'm going to pay more closer attention to that. I don't want that to happen again. There's two ways I can do these shows. Like, I can stream them, which I did tonight, and I've been doing, and I can also upload them and let EV Mux host them. And then I may go that route next week just to make sure the show plays. Because if they do it, there shouldn't be any issues. So we'll see how that goes. Let me see. Let me get caught up here a little bit. You didn't know you would remember those days. Yeah, you were and still are a great friend. Yep. Chad and I still stay in touch on Facebook. Like many people do, I guess. It's funny. We all get older, and but the memories and the friendships that we had back in the day. And this goes for everybody, guys, not just us. But everybody you knew back in your life at one time, they've affected your life in some way, shape, or form. We're just fortunate with what we did to have it captured on video. But something, it could be whatever you did with your friends at school or whatever. And those are fond memories, and that's kind of how we look at the NWF these days. It was just, we knew it was damn fun back in the day to be in it, and then looking back at it afterwards now, we know that it was unique. It was something that was not being done, at least at the level we were doing it, anywhere else at the time. But at the same time, we don't think we were famous. I have never felt like we were famous with a capital F, but I knew we did something unique with a capital U. Let's just put it that way. So, and that's why I came out with the Anoka Armory series DVDs back in 2000. I wanted to put those out because I wanted people, because there was this backyard wrestling craze going on of all this DVDs and stuff of backyard wrestling, and I'm thinking, it kind of gives a black eye to what professional wrestling was, the way they went so overboard with it. And I wanted to show that, it could be done more professionally, more sound, more respect for the business, I guess you could say. And I knew we did that. We may not have been polished, but we at least eventually got pretty good with it. And I wanted to put that out there to let, to show there's another way that this was done before, backyard wrestling, and this is how it was perceived. And because backyard wrestling was getting such a bad rap when those DVDs came out. And I kind of wanted to combat that to show our story and what we did. That's why I did those DVDs. And I know For Your Entertainment, FYE stores, they picked them up and sold them out on the East Coast. But most of the sales came off of Amazon. And Netflix also picked it up for their, when they had the DVD. Remember when Netflix used to do the DVDs only? Yeah, so they did it that way. They approached me one time wanting to know if I could send them digital files to convert for their streaming platform. And I gave them the files, but I think because it was not in HD, they wanted it HD for the streaming, so we missed the boat on the streaming for Netflix for anything there. Yeah, those are good questions. So Gizmo says, thanks. You were great tonight. Thanks for the show. Yeah, I wish Dave was with me, but like I said, don't worry. He'll get it ironed in next week. He'll be here, and I'm not worried about Dave. I know Dave will figure it out. It's just because he's in the middle of moving, and he's super busy, and he didn't have a chance to, and his stuff got packed up, and so he just wasn't quite ready to come on. And but he'll get it figured out next week. Love the live shows. Yeah, I hope you guys don't mind us doing it every other week. It's just a little easier. Dave and I both got a little busier now, so this just helps with our schedules. And we were going to do it once a month, but I did a poll on the Facebook group, and it sounded like most of the guys, and our Facebook group is mainly the wrestlers that were on the show. They want to see it every other week, so I figured we'd go that route. I don't mind doing it, but doing it every week was kind of tough. It was like felt like a job. Not that I didn't mind it, but it's just when you got a real job too, you got to balance your life out. So, I subscribed from your very first one. So yeah, Gizmo, you must have watched the very first one we did back in. I think we went live the first time back in December last year. We did it was a kind of a test really, and we did the October 18th Armory card. It was fun to see how it would go over, how it looked. It was kind of our test, and then we started going live from January every week. And we're gonna do the plan is, hopefully we get, I'm hoping we can do this. We want to do the final so the NWF right now has, and I call them Hall of Fames, but don't take it for that. It's a Hall of Recognition. We want to recognize the kids that kind of stood out on our show as, the ones that we want to recognize and do. I make up plaques and I send them to the guys today. Everybody gets a plaque. And we do a Hall of Fame. We call it a Hall of Fame, but just because that's the term, but it's really Hall of Recognition. And we had 3 years that we did it. We did it in 2014, 2015, and 2016. And I wanted to save the 4th year to coincide with the 40th anniversary of the start of the show. Because the league really went for 4 solid years with my running it. 84, 85, 86, and 87. So I figured we're going to have 4 Hall of Fame classes. And so we're saving that last Hall of Fame to take place at the end of the year. And what I want to do with this podcast is for the people who are in the who are nominated for this, I want to kind of highlight, I want to take groups of them for each show we do, in December there, and kind of just talk about them and highlight them and showcase, how I feel about them on the show. If I had it my way, they'd all be in the Hall of Fame. But I want to point it out, and then we just let it out. We leave it to the YouTube channel and to everybody on our website and Facebook groups, and we let them vote on it. I do not decide any of this. I never did. All of our other Hall of Fames were strictly voted on by the internet, by everybody out there. I'm a big advocate of Hall of Fames being from the fans or the people watching, not somebody like me or anybody else saying, okay, we're going to pick you, we're going to pick you. A Hall of Fame or a recognition that should be decided on by those watching, in my opinion. So, not that we have fans, but people who are entertained with it and think, you know what, out of everything I watched, I think this person and this person and this person stand out, and that's the ones I would vote for, that type of thing. So that's kind of what we're gonna do with that Hall of Fame. I hate using that word because I don't want people to take the wrong impression. But no, it's our Hall of Recognition kind of, and yeah, so that's kind of the plan. If anybody else has any questions, I'm more willing to answer them. See all those belts back there? Those are the belts we had back in the day. The blue belt, the red belt, all those belts except that big one right there were all designed by Steve Engstrom originally. Very creative he was with belts back then. These are replicas, nice replicas, but but Steve was very talented. He's very creative. Very, he wouldn't, he was good, and he gave us some really nice looking belts back in the day. And I just wanted to replicate them. I got a few more coming to finish this wall off, and they will be all done. Let's see, Sports Talk 117. These bi-weekly shows introduce us to all the wrestlers. They do, but I just want to kind of highlight it when we get closer to be more kind of fresh. I'm not going to take it's not going to be like a show and we're going to spend talking about one person the whole show, but just kind of talk. We'll do it in chunks. We'll take a section of them here and a section from here, and then instead of showing shows, we'll show some of their highlights. Maybe highlights of their matches, highlights of their interviews if they have some, and so everybody gets kind of a feel for them a little bit. Kind of, and maybe, who knows, maybe we can get some of them to come on as guests. Speaking of guests, Tony Levitt, I know I got coming up. I'm just waiting for him because he's, as I say, you get older, you got other things going on in your life. So when he's ready and he can do it, he'll let me know. Terry Kosnapple, and again, same situation. It'll be great. If you think I got a good memory, Terry Kosnapple has got a memory better than me. He remembers things I don't remember, and so I'm really looking forward to Terry coming on. Just in the chatting I've done with him, he's pretty good. He remembers things, man. He's got a memory like an elephant. So I'm looking forward to Terry. Terry Kosnapple was Invader 4 or the Destroyer. He was on the Armory cards mainly, the last two. And then there was the Destructors. I was just with John Hopham and I was up there in Minnesota a few weeks ago, and John told me personally, because I went out and sat down with him and talked to him for a bit, spent about a couple hours, just catching up, and he says, we're going to do it. I'm getting them all over here. We're gonna set it up Destructor style. We're going to have us all here, and we're going to be on. So they're going to kind of like do a group of all of it. He's going to try to get them all together, and they'll come on as guests here, very shortly. So I'm looking forward to that. And I know that like guys like Kid Kelsey wanted to do. He had suggested maybe we get maybe him and Ace and a few others who to come on all together, and do more of like a panel thing. I think you guys would probably like that, having more voices to hear from, where you can ask some more questions with them guys. And by the way, if you missed any of this, if you go to our YouTube channel and go to the live tab, all the shows are there. You can rewatch anything. So, if you want to see what I'm talking about, just check that out. Yeah, I'm kind of a one-trick pony this week, guys. Dave, he'll have it figured out, folks. Don't worry too much. Oh, there was another question here. I almost missed it. Do any of the original belts exist? That national title belt, the one under the blue belt behind me there, was made by Steve Engstrom. He kept the belt. He says he still has it. He showed me a picture of it. When I was chatting with him FaceTime or whatever, and it looks like it might still be the same belt, but just like all of our belts, he modified it somewhat. It's changed. It's different, and it doesn't have the look it had in '86. He put like new things on it and stuff, so it doesn't have the same look. But he still has that one. That's just been because what Steve did with these belts, the reason there's so many variations of the blue one is he would make them different. He would change it, he would alter it, he'd make it a little bit better, just changing it up so the things would change on it a little bit over. It still had the same overall look, but he would, change it around. That blue belt, no, that thing, what happened is when I decided to make the new NWF World title for the 1987 Armory card, I took and disassembled this belt to get the different pieces I needed for that belt. Because a lot of those were trophy pieces and stuff on there. And so I wanted to repurpose some of these things. So I at that time, I was ready for a new belt. I had that belt for 3 years. I wished I would have never done that. I wish I would have left it intact. I'll tell you something. The things you could do if you could go back in time. And those purple belt or the maroon belt up there, the world tag title, we don't know. Steve and I talked. We don't know what happened to those. The last people to have them was the Rock and Roll Express when they won them at the October card. And where the belts went, we're not sure. They kind of got lost. My guess is the United States title, the last person to hold that was Kelsey. I would be willing to put money that he might still have that one. But Matt's afraid, if he's out there watching, he's afraid if I knew that, I would want the belt back. But no, Matt, if you have it, it's yours. The person who would probably like it would be Mike Whaley because he made it. Between that blue belt up there and that United States belt, that bigger one on the bottom, those are my two favorite belts. And the national title, that was a fun one. The national tag title was cool, and then the ones that I'm getting that you don't see yet will be the lightweight tag team title, and then the TWA and TWF belts, which were the belts we had before Steve. TWA champion when it was called the Twin Cities Wrestling Association, and the Twin Cities Wrestling Federation tag team champions. So those belts are coming, and that's all I'm going to do. I could do more. I could do the 1985 version of the tag belts, and they had a different look, but I have to stop. If we go down, if Dave was here, he would tell you go down this belt rabbit hole, wrestling belt rabbit hole. Even like that's just the NWF belts. You start getting into the other leagues, you can go down these rabbit holes and end up spending a small fortune. So all of our belts are made by makers overseas that are really I cherry pick the best makers that do the best work. If I used the belt makers here in the United States, they would have been really expensive. But the guys in Pakistan, that's where all the belt makers are because they're made out of zinc, and zinc is abundantly available there, so that's why a lot of belt makers are there. But you get the right ones, and they do just as good of work as anybody. And they're good. They're passionate. So they really get into, like when they do replications like this, they want as many pictures as they can of the belts, and then I have to give them direction on how it looked. And we go through a lot of work to get these things right, and they take great pride in doing that. So they're very talented people, I tell you. Very talented. If you see how they come up with this, I mean, it just looks. If you've seen the stuff in person, this is great. And yeah, so it was a good show. I wish Dave was here to interact with us, but he will be back as will I in 2 more weeks. So the next show is going to be the 28th, and I don't know. We did a garage taping, and we did Fred Moore today. I was thinking maybe we could go to Group W Cable, or maybe we could, we haven't done an outdoor show in a while, and I know a lot of people like those outdoor tapings that we did, and we could do one of those too. So we'll see. Like I said, whenever I hear from Tony, that's going to dictate what show we do, because I have a show kind of holding on to for Tough Tony when he comes on as a guest. So yeah, that's about does it, guys. I appreciate all the questions. It was great. It's like I love answering them as best I can. Yeah, guys, these are good questions tonight too. You're really making me think here. And then Chad bringing up some of this. I forgot that he was around in the like the early stuff before the ropes. I knew I was using Chad for sure when we had the ropes in Group W, but yeah, he was around me before it then. So, and that's just it. You know, that's how I met these guys because we're all at, I along with Chad and Pat and Mike Hobbit, we're all Access users, and so you did a lot of networking there at the Group W facilities, and they knew I was doing the wrestling show, and I'm pretty sure it was like, hey, do you ever need any help? And that's probably how it happened. I'm like, yeah, actually we could, you know. The bad part about our show, when you see the camera going all over the place and stuff, that's, you know, one of the Super Ds might be on it. Everybody wasn't trained officially to use the equipment like I was, because I had to get it checked out, and a few others went through the courses, like Jamie, I said he did, but so they don't always know how to operate it quite right. Some kids were really good at it though. Like they were good on the camera. Again, I think Andy Youngquist, Andy the Ripper Youngquist, one of our wrestlers in the Group W cable days, he was a part. He wrestled on the show because Rob Jacob, you know, brought him on, and we wanted him to be a wrestler, and he understood that. But he would much rather be behind the scenes, on the camera, technical directing. That is where his interest was. He did the wrestling because we wanted him to, but no, he would have much rather been on the cameras and stuff, and he just loved that part of it. So, as an example. All right, I could ramble on and on, you guys, but I think we're going to call her a night. Thanks again for watching and sticking in with me, and for those of you watching that haven't been asking any questions, don't feel shy on our future shows. You know, feel free to chime in with everybody else. You know, it would be certainly would be welcome. We take all questions and all comments. So, you know, I think you and I were in Group W classes, and that's where it started with me and you. That could have been, yeah, you might have been in. I went through those classes in February. I think I took Portapack in February. That's when I first learned to use the camera. So the only reason I know it was February, Chad, is because I've got the card still that says my certification. I still have it. And it was signed by Pam Hansen, if you remember Pam, in February of 1984. All right, so there we go. Well, thanks for tuning in, Chad. Chad, thanks for you coming. You know, Chad, maybe we should get you to come on as a guest one of these days. If you're ever up for it, you know, let me know on Facebook. I'm sure we could get you to come on and join us. You're more than welcome. So, all right, let's call it a show, and I hope you enjoyed watching. And again, 2 more weeks. We'll be back on. I'm sure Dave will be having his glitches figured out, and we'll be me and Dave again, and we'll take her from there. All right. Have a good night, folks.